Today we are going to share a truly incredible and transformative story. You will learn about a near-death experience that completely changed Dahlia Everhart's life and brought shocking revelations about the future of humanity. But before we start, let us know in the comments which city you're watching, and of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our impactful stories. Let's go on this journey together. Hello, my name is Dahlia Everhart. Today I'm 41 years old, but the story I'm going to tell happened when I was just 8. It was in the summer of 1989 in Aspen, Colorado. You know those summer days that seem normal, but end up changing your life forever? That's exactly what happened to me. I was just a little girl, living surrounded by the majestic mountains and lush forests of Aspen. I had an ordinary life. I went to school, played with my older sister, Rowan, and enjoyed summer vacations like any other child. But that summer was different. At that time, I had no idea how my life was about to change. I had no idea that a simple trip to Red Rock Lake would turn into an experience that would challenge everything I believed about life, death, and the universe. Have you ever had that feeling that something important is about to happen? Well, I didn't have it. For me, it was just another day of adventures with my sister. Little did I know that I was about to dive not just into the icy waters of the lake, but on a journey that would take me beyond the limits of life and death. Today, looking back, I realize how that day shaped who I am. The memories of that experience are still vivid in my mind, as if it happened yesterday. It's funny how life works, isn't it? One moment you're playing carefree, the next you're having an experience that will completely change your perception of the world. So, get ready. The story I'm about to tell is not easy to believe. I know that. If someone had told me something like that before that day, I probably would have laughed and thought it was a fabrication. But I can guarantee, every word is true. It's my truth, my experience. I will take you with me on this journey. Let's relive together that day at the lake, the accident, what happened next, and how it all changed my life forever. It's not an easy story to tell, but I feel I need to share it. Who knows? Maybe she can touch someone, make a difference. So, if you're ready, let's go back in time. Back to that summer in Aspen, to that day at Red Rock Lake. The day I, Dahlia Everhart, an 8-year-old girl, almost lost my life, and discovered something much bigger than I could have ever imagined. Do you remember what it was like to be a kid during summer vacation? That feeling of freedom, that the whole world was there to be explored? That's exactly how I felt that day. It was a typical summer day in Aspen. The sun was shining brightly and the sky was such an intense blue that it seemed unreal. Our parents had gone to work, as they did every day. And as always happened, my sister Rowan, who was 10 years old at the time, and I were left alone at home. Rowan. She was my hero, you know. 2 years older, she seemed to know everything. Always courageous. Always with ideas for new adventures. That day was no different. "Hey, Dahlia," she said, and with that twinkle in her eye that always meant she was up to something. "Shall we go to Red Rock Lake?" Red Rock Lake was a somewhat hidden place, not far from home. We had heard stories about colorful fish that swam there. For 2 little girls looking for adventure, it was like we had discovered a secret treasure. I remember picking up my old shoes, the ones that Mom always said I should throw away, but that I loved because they were perfect for our explorations. Rowan took some cookies and put them in a small backpack. "We might get hungry," she said, ever practical. The way to the lake was not long, but for us it seemed like a long journey. We pass along narrow paths, jump over rocks, push aside low-hanging branches. Rowan led the way, as always, leading the way. I followed her, trying to step exactly where she stepped, as if her steps were magical and could protect me. When we finally reached the lake, I was out of breath. I don't know if it was because of the tiredness of the walk or the beauty of the place, probably both. The lake was like a giant mirror reflecting the blue sky and trees around it. The water was so clear that you could see the rocks at the bottom, and the fish, Oh, the fish. They were there, just as we had heard. Little flashes of color swimming near the shore. We stayed there, Rowan and I, sitting on the edge of the lake, watching, fascinated. The sound of the leaves rustling on the trees, the distant buzzing of some insects, the water lapping gently on the bank. It was as if the world had stopped just for us. It was then that I saw him. A little red fish, so small and so vibrant that it seemed unreal. He swam very close to the shore, almost as if he was inviting us to play. At that moment, overcome by childish curiosity, I didn't think twice. I wanted to touch him. I wanted to feel what that colorful little creature was like. I knelt down at the edge of the lake, stretching my hands towards the little red fish. Rowan warned me, "Careful, Dahlia. Don't get too close." But I barely heard. I was completely focused on that little fish, on that little wonder of nature that swam so close. I didn't realize that the bank was slippery because of the mud. I didn't realize I was leaning too much. I didn't realize the danger. All I wanted was to reach that little red fish, as if it were the key to some wondrous mystery. It was in that moment, in that simple act of childish curiosity, that everything changed. One second I was there, kneeling on the bank, fascinated by a little fish. In the other, well, the next, my life was about to change forever. It all happened so fast. One moment I was there, stretching my fingers toward that fascinating little red fish. And the next second, the world turned upside down. I felt the ground slip away from beneath me. Literally, the muddy bank gave way, and suddenly I was falling. I heard Rowan scream my name, saw his hands trying to reach me, but it was too late. It was as if time had slowed down. I could see every detail, Rowan's frightened face, the leaves of the trees swaying above, the blue sky, and then, splash. The icy water enveloped me like an electric shock. I remember thinking, "It's so cold." The contrast with the heat of the summer day was brutal. For a moment, I was paralyzed. My body didn't know how to react to that sudden change in temperature. I tried to move, tried to swim to the surface, but my movements felt sluggish, like I was trying to swim through jelly. The clothes became heavy, pulling me down. Panic began to take over. I wanted to scream, to call for Rowan, for my parents, for anyone, but all I could do was swallow more water. The feeling of not being able to breathe is something I will never forget. It's like your lungs are on fire, begging for air. You want to inhale, but you know that if you do, you'll swallow more water. It's a kind of desperation that you can't explain unless you've been through it. I remember looking up and seeing the sunlight dancing on the surface of the water. It seemed so close and yet so far away. I struggled, moving my arms and legs frantically. But it seemed like the harder I tried, the deeper I sank. At some point, I heard Rowan's voice, distant and muffled by the water. She was screaming for help, I think. But we were alone. There was no one around to help us. It was just me and the cold water of Red Rock Lake. You know those moments in movies when a person's entire life flashes before their eyes? Well, it wasn't like that for me. I didn't see my whole life pass by. All I could think about was how I wanted to go home, how I wanted to hug my mother, how I wanted all of this to be just a nightmare that I would wake up from at any moment. But it wasn't a nightmare. It was real. And with every second that passed, I felt my strength slipping away. My movements slowed. My vision began to darken at the edges. It was as if a fog was forming around me. Fear gave way to a strange acceptance. It wasn't that I had given up, but it was as if my body had understood something that my mind hadn't yet processed. I was losing the battle. My last conscious thought was about Rowan. I wanted to tell her that it wasn't her fault, that she shouldn't feel bad. I wanted to say that I loved her, that she was the best sister in the world, but I couldn't. All I could do was let the darkness envelop me as the world around me slowly disappeared. And then something happened. Something that would change my life forever. Something that would challenge everything I believed I knew about life and death. It's difficult to describe what happened next. How can we explain something that goes beyond everything we know, everything we think possible? But I'll try. I will try to share with you what I experienced in those moments between life and death. Suddenly, everything was calm. The panic, the fear, the desperate struggle to breathe, all of it just disappeared. It was as if someone had pressed a mute button on the world. The silence was absolute, but somehow it wasn't scary. It was comforting. And then I noticed something strange. I could see my body still submerged in the lake, but I was no longer in it. It was as if I were floating above the water, watching everything from afar. I saw Rowan on the bank, screaming and crying. I saw my small body motionless in the water. But I didn't feel scared. I didn't feel sad. It was like I was watching a movie, something that was happening to someone else. The feeling was incredible. I felt incredibly light, as if the entire weight of the world had been lifted from my shoulders. There was no pain. There was no worry. For the first time in my life, I felt completely at peace. And then, I noticed something even more extraordinary. I was no longer just a body or even just a mind. I was light, pure energy. I could feel connected to everything around me, to the trees, to the lake, to the sky, to Rowan. It was like I was part of something much bigger, something that went beyond my small existence as Dahlia. All around me was a feeling of love so deep, so intense, that it is almost impossible to describe. It was as if the universe itself was embracing me, welcoming me. I felt loved in a way I had never experienced before. It was an unconditional, pure love, without judgment or expectations. And then, I heard a voice. Not with my ears, because I no longer had physical ears. It was more like feeling the voice inside me. It was soft, comforting, and somehow familiar. As if I've known her forever. "Everything is going to be okay," said the voice. And I believed. There was no doubt in my mind, or in my essence. Whatever I was at that moment, I knew, with absolute certainty, that I was safe, which was exactly where it was supposed to be. Time seemed to no longer exist. I can't tell if I stayed in that state for seconds or for centuries. All I know is that in that moment, I understood things that my 8-year-old mind could never comprehend. I understood that death was not the end. That we were all part of something much bigger, much more beautiful than we could imagine in our earthly existence. I found myself surrounded by a brilliant light, more intense than anything I had ever seen. But it didn't hurt to look at her. In fact, it was comforting, welcoming. And from that light, a figure emerged, a being that I can only describe as an angel. He or she, because there really was no defined gender, radiated an energy of peace and compassion that left me speechless. Not that I had words at that moment anyway. His clothes were gleaming white, and his expression was one of absolute serenity. The angel approached me, extended his hand and, without saying a word, began to guide me away from the lake. As we got further away, the lake, my body, and Rowan seemed further and further away. It was like we were rising, not physically, but dimensionally, if that makes sense. The sensation was one of absolute lightness, as if I were made of air. As we climbed, the angel began to speak, not with words, but with thoughts that somehow I could understand perfectly. He talked about the future, about humanity, about changes that were to come. On October 10th, 2024, said the angel, a spiritual portal will open on Earth. It will be the beginning of a new era for humanity. I didn't fully understand what this meant, but I could feel the importance of these words. The angel continued, those who are spiritually prepared will be able to pass through this portal and enter a new phase of peace and prosperity. It was a lot of information for an 8-year-old to absorb, but somehow, in that state, I managed to understand. I felt a wave of responsibility hit me, as if somehow my experience was connected to this future event. The angel explained to me that not everyone would be ready for this transformation, which would be a crucial moment for the entire earth. As he spoke, I could see flashes of the future, people coming together, a shift in collective consciousness, a new way of living in harmony with the planet. But before I could ask questions, the angel said goodbye. I was alone for a moment, floating in that space of light and peace. And then, a new presence approached. This new presence was different from the angel. It was a being that seemed more human in a way, but at the same time, it was as if it was made of pure love. I can't explain exactly what it looked like, because it was more of a sensation than a vision. This being, which I will call the being of love, began to show me scenes from my life. It was like watching a movie, but a movie where I could feel all the emotions involved. I saw the moment I helped an elderly woman cross the street. I remember that at the time I didn't think it was a big deal, but now, seeing the scene, I could feel the lady's gratitude, the relief she felt that someone had noticed her difficulty. It was as if I could see the impact of that small act of kindness spreading, affecting not only the lady but everyone she interacted with afterwards. But not all scenes were happy. The being of love also showed me moments I wasn't proud of, like when I accidentally hurt a bird with a slingshot. At the time I had been sad, but now I could feel the bird's pain, the confusion, the fear. It was overwhelming. The being of love did not judge me for these actions. Instead, it made me understand that every choice we make, every action, no matter how small, has an impact on the world around us. It's like throwing a stone into a lake. The waves spread far beyond the point where the stone landed. As I watched these scenes from my life, I began to understand something profound about existence. It wasn't about being perfect or never making mistakes. It was about learning, growing, trying to be a little better every day. The being of love showed me that love, not just romantic love, makamawar, but love in its broadest and deepest sense, is the most powerful force there is. It is what connects us to each other, what gives meaning to our existence. At that moment, I felt immense gratitude for every experience I had, good or bad. Each of them had taught me something, had shaped me in some way. But then, in the midst of all this understanding and peace, I felt something I didn't expect. Longing. I miss my family, my parents, Rowan. I missed the life I had left behind. The being of love seemed to understand what I was feeling. Without words, it made me understand that I had a choice to make. I could stay there, in that place of absolute peace and understanding, or I could go back. It was a difficult decision. Part of me wanted to stay, wanted to continue exploring this new level of existence that I had discovered. But another part knew that there were still things to do, lessons to learn, people to love on earth. I looked at the being of love, trying to express everything I was feeling. Gratitude, love, a little fear, expectation, and he just smiled. Not with the mouth, because it didn't have a physical form as we know it. But I could feel your smile, your love, your understanding. And then, slowly, I began to feel like I was being pulled back. It was as if an invisible thread was connecting me to my body, calling me back to life. The return was not easy. It was slow and, in some ways, painful. It was like trying to fit into an outfit that had become too small. Little by little, I began to feel my body again, the cold of the water, the pain in my lungs, the weight of my limbs, and then, suddenly, I opened my eyes. The first thing I saw when I opened my eyes was my mother's face. She was crying, her tears falling on me. Around me was a group of people, neighbors, I think, all with expressions of relief and amazement. I heard someone say, "It's a miracle." And, well, in a way it was. I had returned. I had chosen to return. The first moments after waking up were confusing. My body hurt. I was coughing up water, and everyone was talking at the same time. But in the midst of all this chaos, I felt strangely calm. It was as if a part of me was still in that place of peace that I had experienced. Rowan was there, holding my hand, crying and smiling at the same time. "I'm sorry, Dahlia," she said between sobs. "I tried to hold you back, I swear I did." I wanted to tell her it wasn't her fault, that it was okay, but my throat hurt too much to speak. All I could do was squeeze her hand, trying to convey with that gesture all the love I felt for her. The days that followed were a mix of medical tests, worry from my parents, and many questions. What had happened? How had I survived underwater for so long? Had I seen something? I didn't know how to answer most of these questions. How can I explain something that I barely understood myself? How to put into words an experience that went beyond words? At first I tried to count. I spoke about the light, about the angel, about the being of love, but I saw in people's eyes that they didn't understand. Some thought it was a child's imagination. Others thought it was some kind of hallucination caused by lack of oxygen. So, little by little, I stopped talking about it. I kept that experience inside me like a precious treasure, something that was mine alone, something I knew was real, even if others didn't understand. But even without talking about it, that experience completely changed the way I saw the world. Suddenly, the little worries of everyday life seemed so insignificant. I had seen something bigger, something deeper. I had experienced a love and connection that went beyond anything we know here on Earth. And there was also that revelation about the future, the spiritual portal that would open in 2024. At the time, 2024 seemed so far away to an 8-year-old. But now, at 41 years old, I see that moment is approaching. Many times over the years I have wondered if I should have talked about this more. One should have tried to prepare people in some way. But something inside me always said that this was not the time, that things would happen in their own time. What I can say is that that experience taught me to live in a different way, valuing every moment, every interaction, seeing love and kindness in the little things, understanding that we are all connected, we are all part of something bigger. Today, looking back, I see how that day at Red Rock Lake was a turning point in my life. It was the day I died, but it was also the day I really started living. And now, with 2024 approaching, I feel a mix of anticipation and apprehension. What will happen when this portal opens? What will this new era be like for humanity? Will we be ready? I don't have all the answers, but what I learned from that near-death experience gives me hope. Hope that whatever the future holds, there is something greater guiding us, something full of love, understanding, compassion. And while that moment doesn't come, I try to live each day remembering that lesson I learned so long ago, that every action, every choice, no matter how small, matters, that love is the most powerful force there is, and that, in the end, we are all light. The years following my near-death experience were interesting, to say the least. How do you grow up knowing you got a glimpse of the other side? How do you live a normal life after having experienced something so extraordinary? At first, it was difficult. I was a child trying to process something that many adults couldn't understand. I had frequent nightmares about drowning, waking up in the middle of the night feeling like I was suffocating. My worried parents took me to a therapist. The therapist was kind, patient. He listened to my stories about the light, the angel, the being of love. But I could see in his eyes that he didn't really believe it. To him, they were just the delusions of a traumatized young mind. He taught me breathing techniques, helped me deal with my fear of water. And over time, the nightmares lessened. But the experience itself, that never went away, it was always there, in the back of my mind, influencing every aspect of my life. At school, I started to see things differently. The fights on the playground, the competitions for grades and popularity, everything seemed so small. I had seen something bigger, something more important. It made me a strange child, I suppose. Quiet, thoughtful, sometimes distant. Rowan, my sister, was my biggest support during these years. She never doubted me, never questioned my experience. "I saw you disappear underwater, Dahlia," she told me once. And then, suddenly, you were back. If you say you saw an angel, I believe you. That support from her meant the world to me. Having someone who believed in me, who didn't think I was crazy or a liar, made all the difference. As I grew up, I learned to keep my experience to myself. It wasn't something I could share easily. The few times I've tried to talk about it with friends, I've been met with skeptical looks or nervous laughter. So it became my secret, something I carried silently. But even though it was a secret, this experience shaped who I became. It made me more compassionate, more attentive to the needs of others. I started volunteering at shelters, helping with community projects. I felt like I had been given a second chance at life, and I wanted to use that chance to make a difference. The revelation about the spiritual portal of 2024 was always in the back of my mind. Growing up, I researched prophecies, planetary changes, spiritual evolution. I found many theories, many different ideas. Some resonated with what I had experienced. Others seemed completely disconnected. I confess that there were times when I doubted, moments when I wondered if it had all been just a vivid dream, a hallucination caused by a lack of oxygen. But then, I remembered the feeling of peace, the unconditional love I had experienced, and I knew, deep in my heart, that it had been real. When it came time to choose a career, I chose to become a nurse. I wanted to be close to people who were going through difficult times. I wanted to be able to offer comfort and care. And perhaps, secretly, I hoped to find others who had gone through similar experiences to me. And I found it. Over the years, working in hospitals, I have met several people who have had near-death experiences. Their stories, although different in detail, had surprising similarities to mine. The light, the feeling of peace, meeting loving beings. It was comforting to know that I wasn't alone. But none of these people mentioned the 2024 portal. That remained something unique to my experience, something only I seemed to know. Now, at age 41, I look back and see how this experience shaped every aspect of my life. My career choice, my relationships, my worldview. Everything was influenced by that day at Red Rock Lake. And as 2024 approaches, I feel a mix of emotions. Expectation, anxiety, hope. Am I ready for what's to come? Is the world ready? As the years passed and I entered adulthood, the memory of that experience at Red Rock Lake continued to shape my worldview in profound and sometimes surprising ways. In relationships, for example, I have always sought a deeper connection. That feeling of unconditional love that I experienced during my NDE has become something of a gold standard. Not that I expected human love to be like that. I knew it was something beyond our earthly understanding, but it made me value authenticity, compassion, and empathy above all else. This has made some relationships difficult. A lot of people didn't understand why I seemed so intense, maybe, because I was always looking for meaning in every interaction. I had some relationships that didn't work out because, according to them, I thought things too much. But it has also brought me incredibly deep and meaningful friendships. People who, in some way, resonated with this search for something more. And, of course, my relationship with Rowan continued to be an anchor in my life. She was always my confidant, the only person I could talk openly about my experience without fear of judgment. Working as a nurse, my experience has given me a unique perspective on life and death. I wasn't afraid of death in the same way that many people are. This allowed me to be there for terminally ill patients in a way that many of my colleagues found difficult. I remember one patient in particular, an elderly woman with terminal cancer. She was scared, fighting the inevitable. One day, I sat next to her and, breaking all professional rules, I told her about my experience. I saw the fear in his eyes, replaced by a peace I recognized. She died a few days later, but her family told me that her final days were filled with a serenity they had never seen in her before. Moments like these made me question whether I should speak more openly about my experience. Maybe it could bring comfort to more people. But there was always that fear of not being taken seriously, of being labeled as crazy or new age. And, of course, there was always that revelation about 2024 hanging over me. As the years passed and the date approached, I wondered more and more what would happen. I started paying more attention to the news, looking for signs of global changes, of a collective spiritual awakening. Sometimes I saw things that seemed to confirm what I had been shown. The increased interest in spiritual and meditative practices, the advances in quantum physics that seemed to blur the lines between science and spirituality, the global movements for peace and sustainability. All of this seemed to point to a shift in collective consciousness. Other times, I looked at the world and felt discouraged. Wars, environmental destruction, political divisions. How could we be ready for a spiritual leap with so many problems? But then I remembered what I had experienced. That feeling that, in the end, everything was part of a bigger plan. That even things that seemed negative had a purpose in the grand scheme of things. This did not mean that I remained passive in the face of the world's problems. On the contrary, it motivated me to do my part. I started to get more involved in environmental and social causes. I organized meditation groups at the hospital where I worked. Little things, perhaps, but I believed that every positive action created ripples of change, just as the being of love had shown me. As I approached my 40s, I began to feel a growing urgency. 2024 was coming, and I wondered if I should do more to prepare people. But how do I prepare someone for something that even I did not fully understand? I decided the best thing I could do was live up to what I had learned. Be an example of love, compassion, and awareness. Being open to mentoring those who seem to be seeking something more. And so, here I am. At age 41, looking back at that 8-year-old girl who had a life-changing experience, and looking forward to a future that promises great change. I don't know exactly what 2024 will bring. I don't know if there will be a dramatic event or if it will be a subtle shift in collective consciousness. But I know I'm ready for whatever comes, because that experience at Red Rock Lake taught me that, in the end, we are all part of something bigger, something beautiful and full of love. And as we walk into this unknown future, I carry with me the certainty that, no matter what happens, everything will be okay. Because at the heart of all existence there is love. A love that I experienced once, and that I hope one day everyone can know. Now, as I sit here writing these words, I feel the weight of the years that have passed since that day at Red Rock Lake. 33 years have passed, and here we are on the brink of 2024, the year the angel mentioned, the year of the spiritual portal. It's strange to think that I spent most of my life carrying this knowledge, this expectation. There were times when I wished I could forget, that I could live a normal life without the weight of this responsibility. But whenever these thoughts would arise, I would remember the feeling of peace and love I experienced, and I knew I wouldn't trade that experience for anything in the world. As 2024 approaches, I can't help but wonder, what will it be like? What exactly will happen? Will it be a dramatic event, visible to everyone? Or is it something more subtle? A shift in collective consciousness that we will only notice looking back. I have been watching the world closely over the last few years, looking for signs. And I must say I see reason for hope. I see an increase in interest in spiritual and meditative practices. I see more people questioning the status quo, looking for ways to live more consciously and sustainably. I see a growing recognition of our interconnectedness, not just with each other, but with all life on Earth. But I also see challenges. I see divisions, conflicts, fear. I see people clinging to old ways of thinking and acting, resisting change. And I ask myself, how can we overcome these obstacles? How can we prepare for this new era that, according to the angel, is coming? I don't have all the answers. In fact, the closer we get to 2024, the more I realize how much I don't know. But what I know, what I feel in the depths of my being, is that we are on the verge of something important, something that has the potential to fundamentally change the way we live and relate to each other and the world around us. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I can still feel that feeling of unconditional love that I experienced during my NDE. And I think, what if everyone could feel this? What if everyone knew, really knew, that deep down we are all one, all connected, all part of something bigger? I imagine a world where decisions are made based on love and compassion, not fear and greed. A world where we understand that harming others is harming ourselves. A world where we recognize our responsibility not just to each other, but to all life on Earth. It's an ambitious dream, I know. But after what I've experienced, how can I dream of less? And then I remember the angel's words. Those who are spiritually prepared will be able to pass through this portal and enter a new phase of peace and prosperity. And I wonder, what does it mean to be spiritually prepared? For me, I believe it means cultivating love, compassion, and awareness in our daily lives. It means recognizing the interconnectedness of all things and acting on that understanding. It means being open to change, willing to question our beliefs and behavior patterns. It's not an easy path. It requires courage, honesty, and a willingness to face our own shadows. But I believe it is a path worth taking, regardless of what 2024 may bring. As I write these words, I feel a mix of emotions, expectation, hope, a little fear of the unknown. But most of all, I feel gratitude. Gratitude for that Red Rock Lake experience that shaped my life in so many ways. Gratitude for the opportunity to be here, now, on the brink of what could be a new era for humanity. I don't know exactly what the future holds. I don't know what this spiritual portal will look like or how it will manifest. But I know that whatever comes next, I will be ready to face it with an open heart and a receptive mind. And to all of you reading this, my message is this. No matter what 2024 brings, remember that at the heart of all existence is love. A love that transcends our understanding, a love that connects us all. If we can keep this in mind, if we can act from this place of love and connection, I believe we will be prepared for any change that may come. We are on the cusp of something new, something potentially transformative. And although the future is uncertain, I feel honored and excited to be here, now, being part of this moment in human history. May we all enter this new era with open hearts, receptive minds, and a deep sense of love and connection with all that is. As I prepare to conclude this narrative, I realize that sharing my story has been a journey in itself. Reliving those moments, reflecting on how they shaped my life and contemplating what might lie ahead, it all made me realize how deeply that experience at Red Rock Lake affected me. I know my story may seem unbelievable to many. Near-death experiences, angels, spiritual portals, these are not things that are part of most people's everyday reality. And I understand if there is skepticism. There were times when I doubted myself, times when I wondered if it was all just an elaborate creation of my mind. But deep in my heart, I know that what I experienced was real. And more than that, I feel like it was a gift, a glimpse of something greater, something that is beyond our everyday understanding. I'm not here to convince anyone. I'm not asking you to believe me or change your beliefs based on my experience. What I hope, by sharing my story, is to plant a seed of possibility, of hope. Because ultimately, what I learned from that experience now, and in the years that followed, is that there is more to life than what we can see or touch. There is a deep connection between us all, an invisible web of love that binds us together. And if there's one message I'd like to leave, it's this. Love is real. Not just the romantic or familial love we experience in our daily lives, but a deeper, more universal love. A love that transcends our understanding, that connects us to everything and everyone. Regardless of what 2024 may bring, regardless of whether or not there is a spiritual portal, I believe we can create a better world if we open ourselves to that love, if we can see beyond our differences, beyond our fears and prejudices, and recognize the humanity in each other. It's not easy. We live in a world full of challenges, divisions, suffering, but we also live in a world full of beauty, of compassion, of infinite possibilities. As we approach 2024, I invite everyone to reflect on their own lives, their own journeys. What does it mean to you to live a life full of meaning? How can you cultivate more love and compassion in your daily life? How can you contribute to creating a more harmonious and connected world? We don't need a near-death experience to make a difference. Each of us has the power to create waves of positive change in our lives and the world around us. Every act of kindness, every moment of authentic connection, every conscious choice, it all matters. And if, in fact, we are on the verge of a great planetary change, may we face it with courage, with openness, and, above all, with love. I end this narrative with a heart full of gratitude. Gratitude for that experience at Red Rock Lake that changed my life. Gratitude for each person who crossed my path and helped me grow. Thank you for the opportunity to share my story.